Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we talk about interesting people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that have made an impact on the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
Welcome back to another episode in our newest series on
Women Who Changed the World.
February is Black History Month, so our first few Women Who Changed the World episodes honor the Black women who have worked so hard to make our world a better place. The women we are highlighting broke barriers, stood up for others, and challenged what the world thought was possible. They created doors for future generations to walk through.
They did so much.
They did. And before we get into another episode in our series on women who changed the world, make sure to subscribe so you can be the first to get all of our new content and episodes.
Let's get into it.
Good call, Cece. Here we go. So far in February, we've had episodes on abolitionist Sojourner Truth, civil rights leader Rosa Parks, and Black aviator Bessie Coleman. And today we're going to introduce you to another incredible Black woman who's changed the world. She was the first Black child who integrated an all-white school in the South when she was just 6 years old.
Any idea who it was?
Well, let me give a few more clues. She's an author, a civil rights leader, has a foundation, and she's still alive and driving progress today.
That is cool.
It is, and this cool woman who changed the world is named Ruby Bridges.
I'm excited to learn more.
Same here. Ruby Bridges was born on September 8th, 1954 in Mississippi. Her parents and grandparents worked as sharecroppers while living in Mississippi. When Ruby was young, her family moved to New Orleans, Louisiana so they could find better opportunities.
Check this out.
Do you know what sharecropping is? This was the job Ruby's family did before they moved to New Orleans. It's a type of farming. A sharecropper doesn't own the land they farm. They just work the land and share their harvest with the person who owns the land as a form of payment. Sharecroppers were often poor and couldn't afford their own land. Sharecropping was very common in the South after the Civil War and the end of slavery.
I learned something new today.
It's always fun to learn something new. When Ruby's family moved to New Orleans in search of better opportunities, they did so at an interesting time. A couple years before, a big Supreme Court case called Brown versus the Board of Education had happened in 1954, which was right around when Ruby was born, and they moved a couple years after this ruling. Basically, what happened was that in the 1954 Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court voted that racial segregation in public schools was against the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and that segregation in schools needed to stop. The 14th Amendment stops states from denying equal protection of the laws to any person. What this means is all states must treat everyone the same, including at school, by giving everyone equal rights, no matter who they are or where they come from. You can think of it like making sure everyone gets a fair chance.
Oh, that's important.
It is. And this happened right around the time that Ruby was born and was starting to go to school. When Ruby was in kindergarten, she took a test that was given to all African American school children to figure out which students could enter all white schools. Ruby Bridges was one of the 6 Black kids who passed the test, and she was selected to attend William Frantz Elementary School, an all-white elementary school in New Orleans.
She sounds really smart.
She was, and brave. Her dad didn't initially want her to enroll in the white school, but her mom convinced her dad to let her go. Now, listeners, I know some of you might be around 6 years old or even a little bit older, and I want you to imagine how brave and strong Ruby Bridges was as I tell you this story. And I want you to keep this in mind. Ruby Bridges was the first Black child to attend a white elementary school in Louisiana.
Tell us!
On November 14th, 1960, it was Ruby Bridges' first day of school at the formerly all-white William Frantz Elementary School. When Ruby walked up to go to school, there were huge crowds of angry grown-ups yelling and calling this little girl all kinds of terrible names. She had things thrown at her, and because it was so loud and crowded, she didn't understand that everyone was there because of her. She thought the crowd was Mardi Gras, which is a big party that happens in New Orleans. To protect her from the crowds and the angry grown-ups, she had to be escorted by her mother and several U.S. Marshals. The Marshals were there to protect her and to make sure the school got integrated or desegregated. Later, when she was asked about her first day of school as an adult, Ruby Bridges remembers that after they brought her into the school, the angry parents that were outside rushed into the school and took their children out of school. Ruby spent her first day in the principal's office as mad parents marched into school to take their children out. Many white parents chose to homeschool their kids instead of sending them to school with a black child.
I can't imagine.
Ruby ended up being the only student in her class, and she had a white teacher named Ms. Henry, and she taught Ruby for all of first grade. Even with all the racism, name-calling, and crowds, Ruby Bridges did not miss a single day of school in first grade.
What an amazing story!
It would have been amazing if anyone had done this, but being the first black child to attend an all-white school was a huge step forward for civil rights and equal opportunities for all. Anyone who did that would have had to be brave, but Ruby Bridges was only 6 when she took this historic step. Can you imagine? Ruby's story has inspired a movie, books, and there's even a famous painting of her by artist Norman Rockwell. Do you have any idea where the famous painting of Ruby Bridges is displayed? Is it A, the Smithsonian, B, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, or C, the White House Art Gallery? If you said C, you're right. The famous painting of Ruby Bridges by Norman Rockwell is called The Problem We All Live With, and it's displayed at the White House Art Gallery. While Ruby's story is inspiring, it was extremely hard for her as a child. She had to bring her own lunch to school because there were worries that someone would try to poison her. Both her parents lost their jobs as a result of their bravery in sending their daughter to desegregate the white school. The pressures at home with the threats and struggles to find work caused her parents to split up. In her first year of school, Ruby was also not allowed to participate in recess or go to the cafeteria. She was often alone and struggled a lot. It was later revealed that the principal of her school was keeping her away from the white children, even though the laws had changed.
That is not okay.
I agree. Her teacher, Ms. Henry, advocated for Ruby to be included with the other kids. One day, a young boy told her he wasn't allowed to play with her and called her a really mean name that had to do with the fact she was black. She's reflected on that moment that was her first real introduction to racism because she hadn't understood that much of the anger and the mobs from when she first went to school were about her being black. Remember, she thought those crowds were Mardi Gras.
How sad.
The good news is in her second year at school, she was no longer separated from the other students.
That is cool.
Absolutely. And there were more black kids who attended the school each year she went. Eventually, the mobs and protests died down as well. Ruby Bridges finished grade school and graduated from the integrated Francis T. Nichols High School in New Orleans. After finishing her education, she became a travel agent and had the opportunity to travel around the world thanks to her job.
I like that.
Ruby got married to her husband Malcolm in 1984, and they eventually had 4 sons together. For a long while, Ruby Bridges wasn't recognized in her daily life as an adult. But in 1995, a children's book called The Story of Ruby Bridges was released, and it resurfaced her story to the world.
I want to check out more about that.
We can check it out at the library, Cece. The author of the book, Robert Coles, gave Ruby proceeds from the sales of the book. She used these funds to develop a foundation in 1999. Her foundation is called the Ruby Bridges Foundation.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yup. The Ruby Bridges Foundation stands for the values of tolerance, respect, and appreciation of all differences. I mentioned at the start of the episode, she's also an author. Ruby Bridges has written or co-authored 5 books. She's also gotten to meet a president of the United States. Do you want to guess which one? Was it A, Barack Obama, B, Bill Clinton, or C, George W. Bush? If you said A, you're right. President Barack Obama even extended his gratitude to Ruby. Together, they went to look at the Norman Rockwell painting I mentioned earlier of her. And while they were looking at it, Obama told her, "I think it's fair to say that if it hadn't been for you guys, I might not be here and we wouldn't be looking at this together." In 2000, she was made an honorary deputy U.S. Marshal, and in 2010, Ruby Bridges was honored at the White House. In 2024, she was inducted to the National Women's Hall of Fame. We can honor Ruby's brave act of desegregating the school all those years ago through our kindness and being welcoming of others who are different than us. As always, we would like to end with a rhyme to help you remember Ruby's story.
We wrote you a poem.
Born in Mississippi, her family roots ran deep. At school in New Orleans, she dared to take leaps. Ruby Bridges, just 6, with courage so bright. She faced angry crowds but stood up for what's right. To an all-white school, she opened the door for children of color seeking more. Escorted by marshals, her spirit held true. Desegregation, she was breaking right through. Though the path wasn't easy, she took this task. Ruby Bridges was first, but certainly wasn't last. At Check This Out, we know it can be hard to know if information you find online is accurate. We use verified sources to build the stories you hear about. Our sources for this week's episode are womenshistory.org, rubybridges.com, the Indiana Children's Museum, and Encyclopedia Britannica.
Thanks for listening. See you next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.